Hello. This could almost be seen as a part 2 of the previous tutorial, where I showed you how to do a checker texture, how to add in basic meshes. There's some other things I wanted to add on. Let's say, for example, if we wanted shadows to play around with. It's great and all to have meshes to draw from, but since we've already built something out, it'd be great if we could also have the shadow information. Another thing I wanted to add too was it can get a little confusing with these grids being a similar color. We could copy our previous checkered material and distinguish the props from the floor. We can do that right now if we select the floor texture. You can see it's material 1. Let me just correct that to checker. By doing this, these two materials are shared, so this should be named checkered as well, as we can see. Let's go back to the floor texture here. We'll click on that. We'll click this button, which creates an instance or another copy of this. You can note it copying it or duplicating by having a numerical value of .001. We can just do this, and we can do floor checker. And we go back to this. You can see these two are different materials now. We can edit this freely. So let's go here and let's just change it to something that distinguishes two. It's easier to see. This is kind of nice. I like this. So now when we render this out, it'll be easy to see where the props start, but as well as keep the consistency of it. Okay. Well, let's move on to adding shadows back on. In a previous tutorial, I removed the principal BSDF because it was a little too fancy for our needs. But if we wanted to add it back on, we can simply Shift A and add principal BSDF. Basically how this works is we can grab the color from the checker, put it here, and add it to BSDF. There is no light information currently, so that's why everything just went dark. But if we add in a sun, Shift A, look for light here, add in the sun. It's pointing straight down, and that's why it's being casted here. But now you can see the shadow is back. Let's just rotate this around this way. You can see that it's having a bit of reflection here. It's due to the specularity. We can hide that down this way. Now, this is shadow information. But we can do something a bit better than this. This is very cool in a stylized way, but I think being an artist as well, or a designer, it can get a little annoying trying to clip this out or draw it out. Rather, it'd be great if we can render out the shadows separately from the checkers. So that's something I'll be showing you how to do. Let's take a look at this now. It's really cool seeing this. Okay, so let's just go back, plug this back to surface, delete this. That was a demonstration purpose. We'll create a new node, a new material by hitting the plus menu, new. If we have the shader node tree up, you can access that if you don't have this already by clicking up here and going to shader editor. Alright, let's just name this shadow. Then I like to keep things fairly simple. So we can go into something. We can simply use the principal BSDF, and we can create an instance of this. I like creating collections to keep everything in. We can almost see that as a folder, like in Photoshop. So let's say if I select the folder and this, we can hit M and do a new collection and call this objects. We can hit OK. Now, it's its own little collection here called objects. We can go even further than this and designate this as grid objects. Now that will just dictate this, what we see in here is just the grid objects. There are better ways of optimizing it, but for now, since this is a very beginner friendly tutorial, we're just going to right click on this and duplicate collection. What's going to happen now, it's going to copy the whole collection here twice. If we hide this, you can see it's the same. But with this one, we're going to designate this as shadow. Cool. Let's click this, And you can see the shadow material here. How do we add that on? Well, we can do it one of two ways. We can either delete the top one by hitting this and remove material, and that bottom one will automatically be slotted on top, revealing its cool shadowy nature. The other way, let's say if you have two materials, is if we tab in, select everything, click on this, and hit assign. Now what's the difference between both ways? Well, if you want to get really creative with your grids and like start splitting things off in certain ways, this would be something you might want. What I mean by that is, let's say if I tab in, I've subdivided this, and let's say I wanted this area just to be grids, I can click back up and assign. Now you can see it's partially assigned this way. You can add different materials and colors. I'm getting sidetracked there. So assign, same thing here. We can remove this, or we can simply replace this. So right now it's referencing checker. Click this and we can navigate towards shadow. I made another one previously as a test purpose, but I'll click on shadow. Now everything is all sharing the shadow material. Try to remove specularity, increase roughness. But now you can see it's, what if we just simply wanted, excuse me. If we just wanted a binary mask. What I mean by that, just like white or black. We can do something very similar by adding a shade to RGB node, which is used in a lot of stylized renderings. To create a simple node, let's just delete the BSDF. Let's add in a diffuse. Through this, we can add in a shader to RGB. Like this here. So now it's the color information to RGB. Now it's looking for color input. Let's add in a color ramp. Click that, add that into the factor, and from here we can add this into surface. Looks like nothing has changed. We can also increase the roughness here. But if we increase this, we can see we can start affecting the way the colors interact. This can lend itself to really stylized things. Let's just say, if you want the shadow to be a completely different color, that is possible. You can get really cool stylized looks this way. You can also go into constant, and we can increase this. With the threshold, you can see it just pops that way. This is what we're after, minus the color. We can revert this back to white and black. But in reality, you can use any color because you can quick select and quick mask this. So now we have our shadow information. We can click on this and we can start rotating this around, trying to find the kind of shadow we want. Again, this is extremely stylized, and you don't have to do it with a constant. If you wanted soft shadows, that is completely fine. I really like the hard edge aesthetics, so I tend to choose this way. But just for example's sake, all you have to do is click this, hit ease, and just increase this back up. You can have it this way. You can see there's more values. Similarly, if we go back to constant, we can simply add, let me zoom in here, simply add in more colors. So we can add in like a gray. You can see with the gray popping in here. We can increase the threshold this way. And now we have 3 tones. Rotate this around again. So let's say we're extremely happy with this. We like the way this looks, and we can use this for our base. Do we have a camera? Yes, we do. I've added a camera previously. So let's find a view that is gonna be my magnum opus. Alright, what is complicated? And what could wow people? Alright, let's say like that. See, those shadows look extremely difficult. Get a bit more of the shadow work in here. Of course, I can play around with lighting, but let's choose this for now here. You can spend a lot of time finessing the shadows into something we want here. That's kind of neat. There we go. A bit of an angle that way. Okay. So we have this angle, and we have something called view layer. It should be the same with our grid here. So we have grid and a shadow. But now, how do we render out both at the same time? Well, that's where view layers come in. Currently, we're just in view layer. We can call this grid for now, and this will only access the grid objects. Remember to uncheck shadow. We can go up here and click new, it's going to enable everything. We can also click new and blank, and that won't enable anything. It just depends what you want. Let's delete grid 2 for now. Grid 1, this will be our shadows. Go up here, name it. Naming is very important. And let's name this shadow. So if we toggle between the two, grid and shadow. Very handy. There's another thing too, so we notice that the background here is gray. We would want something transparent, so that'll be easier to clip out. Unless you already have a certain background color back here. But just to show you, we can click on, it's sometimes hidden, film, transparent, and then you should see a checkered, which would designate what areas will have the alpha. This is for everything, so grid, shadow. Let's go into compositing, use nodes. We're going to construct something very simple that'll render out shadow and grid. You can see here in the render layers, it's already rendering out the grid. But how do we render out the shadow at the same time? Well, that's pretty simple. What we're going to do is click on the render layers, duplicate this by using Shift D, Shift A. I'm going to add in something called file output. What file output's used for is just basically seeing, what do you call it? Intermediate stages of the rendering process, but I like to use it to render out a lot of passes. Right, so we have file output. I'm going to go into item, properties, and here we can designate what kind of file format you want. There's a number of file formats here, but we'll use PNG for now. Make sure it's RGBA. There's been a few times I've written RGB, and it won't render out the alpha if you have. If that's the case, you might want to check this. So, red, green, blue, alpha. We don't want any compression. We want a secondary input. I'm going to connect image to image, image to image 1. It's also a very important thing to name these. So this is going to be the grid, and this is going to be a shadow. We really don't need this composite layer here, so we can click on this and delete that. Alright, the next step is, remember we have grid, view layer, and we also have shadow. So make sure grid's here, shadow is here, and now what we can end up doing is choosing a path. Click on this, and we can choose a path somewhere here. Let's call it shadow. Alright. Now all we have left to do is just render it out. Render, render image. Now those two have been rendered out. Let's take a look, open it up. What do you know? It's right here. The reason why it wasn't in shadow is because I didn't click on this and hit accept. That's something important. So if we render this out again, it should be rendered here. Hopefully this helps. Thank you.